Hey everyone, welcome back to Stadium Stats. This week we'll be taking a look at Week 10 of the NFL schedule. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Coming in on Thursday Night Football, we've got a matchup between the Bengals and the Ravens. And this, as always with divisional matchups, could end up being a close game. They tend to play each other pretty close. But the Ravens are a much better team than the Bengals are this year. The Ravens absolutely destroyed the Broncos last week, 41-10. In a game where their offense looked absolutely dominant and their defense really was suffocating as well, which hadn't been the case all season for that defense. But it was a pretty impressive performance by them. The Bengals, on the other hand, beat the Raiders pretty bad, 41-24. But they really have struggled this season on defense. They've been letting up a ton of points, and the Raiders don't have that good of an offense and still scored 24 points on them. So I am going to pick the Ravens to win this one. I think the Ravens' offense and defense are both better than the Bengals, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was a close matchup, as a lot of divisional matchups tend to be. So let's see how this goes. Coming in on Sunday morning in Munich, we have a terrible game between the Giants and the Panthers. The Panthers are actually coming off a win over the Saints in a game where Bryce Young led a game-winning drive. He looked pretty good in that game. Their offense was working. Their defense finally held the team under 30 points. But their defense has been absolutely terrible this season, letting up over 30 points a game. So not impressive at all for them. The Giants, on the other hand, they lost to the Commanders in a game where Jayden Daniels looked really good against that defense. The Giants' defense really couldn't do a whole lot against the Washington offense. But the Giants' offense was actually performing. Daniel Jones finally got a touchdown at home. Pretty decent day for them. I think the Giants are a better team than the Panthers. I don't think this will be that close, as the Panthers tend to really struggle against good defenses, and the Giants' defense can be pretty suffocating, especially their defensive line. So I am going to pick the Giants to win, as I think Bryce Young caves under the pressure of the Giants' defensive line. Coming in at noon, we've got a matchup between the Bears and the Patriots. The Bears coming off a rough loss to the Cardinals in a game where they lost 9-29. They looked bad on both offense and defense. Their run defense looked terrible. They finally let up over 20 points to a team. They really couldn't do anything on offense, as they scored a total of 3 field goals. Just a really bad day for them all around. The Patriots, they brought a game to overtime against the Titans, where they lost by a field goal. Drake May looked pretty good in that game. He led a game-winning drive, or a game-tying drive, right at the end of regulation, with a really impressive play as regulation ended to keep the game alive. But the Patriots are not a good team, and the Bears have been most of the time. So I am going to pick the Bears to win this one. I don't think this will be that close of a game. I think the Bears' defense will be way too much for the Patriots' offense to handle, and I don't think the Patriots' defense will be that bit of a struggle for the Bears' offense. So I'm going to pick the Bears to win. Coming in also during the noon window, we have a matchup between the Steelers and the Commanders. The Steelers, they're coming off a bye week, much deserved. Russell Wilson's been playing pretty well. They've been getting a lot of wins. Their offense has been performing. Najee Harris has been getting over 100 rushing yards in most games. The Commanders, on the other hand, they're coming off another win. They're 7-2, best start since 1996 for that Commanders team, and they've been really impressive this year, both on offense and on defense, completely outperforming everybody's expectations. Jayden Daniels has been looking really good, and I do think this will be a pretty close game, as the Steelers' defense is one of the best defenses the Commanders have gone up against. So I'm interested to see how Jayden Daniels is able to perform, as he wasn't really able to get a whole lot of touchdowns against the Bears defense, which was pretty suffocating against him last week. So I'm pretty intrigued to see another good defense against him. But I am going to pick the Steelers to win this one. I think the Steelers defense, being as established as they are, is going to be too much for the Commanders offense to handle. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is a really close and competitive game. Up next, we've got a matchup between the Falcons and the Saints. And this, as all divisional matchups, should be pretty close. The Saints though are not a very good team. They lost to the Panthers last week in a game where Derek Carr returned, and they still looked really bad. They just could not perform on offense. They could not perform on defense, and they looked pretty bad. The Falcons, on the other hand, they handled the Cowboys as they won 27-21. They looked really good on offense. Drake London got left the game with an injury pretty quickly, and they still were able to hold up on offense. Kirk Cousins played pretty well. Their defense played pretty well as well. Although they are the worst team at getting sacks this season, so that is a pretty big knock against their defense. That being said, the Falcons are a much better team than the Saints, so I am going to pick the Falcons to win this one. Up next, we have a matchup between the Titans and the Chargers. The Titans, they're coming off a win over the Patriots in overtime. Mason Rudolph looked all right. Their defense was pretty good, and they played decent overall. The Chargers, they're coming off a pretty big win over the Browns in a game where they won 27-10. Their defense was suffocating. They really didn't let up anything in the run game. The Browns really couldn't do anything at all on offense, and it was a really impressive performance by that Chargers defense. I think the Chargers are a much better team. I'm going to go with the Chargers to win this one, and I think their defense will be way too much for the Titans to handle. Up next, we've got a matchup between the Jets and the Cardinals. The Jets, they're coming off a win over the Texans on Thursday Night Football to keep their season alive. They looked good on offense. They had a really rough first half, but they looked great on offense in the second half. Garrett Wilson looked great. Devontae Adams looked great. Aaron Rodgers played great. Breece Hall played great. And their defense really stepped it up in that second half. The Cardinals, on the other hand, they're coming off a win over the Bears in a game where they also played really well. Their offense was really performing. Their defense was suffocating. They didn't let up a single touchdown and only let up 3 field goals the whole day. Pretty impressive performance by them. I am going to pick the Jets. I think they have more experience. I think they're a better team on paper. And while the Cardinals have been playing better this season, I don't think that's going to work against the Jets. I think the Jets are really rebounding. And while I don't think they'll make the playoffs, I do think in order for them to have a chance at rebounding, they need this win, and they're going to be fighting harder for it. So I'm going to pick the Jets. Up next, we've got a matchup between the Eagles and the Cowboys. The Eagles, they're coming off a win over Jacksonville Jaguars in a game where they played pretty well. It was pretty close, though, and the Jaguars are not that good of a team. So while the Eagles' offense did perform pretty well, and Saquon had an amazing game, their defense really did not perform that well, as they really did let up a decent amount of points to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have struggled a lot on offense this season. That being said, their defense did come in clutch with an interception to win the game. On the other hand, the Cowboys, they're coming off a loss to the Falcons in a game where Dak Prescott got hurt, and they did not play very well. Cooper Rush played well enough, though, to keep them in that game, but they did end up losing that game anyways. The Cowboys are not a very good team. The Eagles have been a much better team this season, so I'm going to pick the Eagles to win this one. I don't think this will be that close of a game. However, as it is a divisional matchup between the Eagles and Cowboys, and their games tend to be pretty close, I wouldn't be surprised if this one was close, but I'm still going to go with the Eagles to win. Up next, we've got a matchup between the Bills and the Colts. The Bills, they're coming off a win over the Dolphins with a 61-yard field goal to win the game. The Bills played really well. Their defense didn't perform that well, as the Dolphins were able to keep up with them the whole game. However, their offense played really well. Even without Amari Cooper, they were really performing well. The Colts, on the other hand, they had their worst offensive performance of the entire year. Joe Flacco played terrible. They had terrible amount of first downs. They had barely any yards. They only scored 6 offensive points, although they did score 7 on defense as well. Just a really poor performance by them on offense. Maybe Anthony Richardson will play in this game, but this will be a challenging one for the Colts no matter what, as they're playing the Bills. So I'm going to pick the Bills to win this one. I think they're a much better team than the Colts. However, I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts are able to stay in this one, but I'm still going to go with the Bills to win. Up next, we've got a matchup between the Lions and the Texans. This matchup, the Lions, they're coming off a win over the Packers in a game where They proved they can win outdoors in bad weather. They've really only played in domes all season, but they were able to come away with a win in the rain against the Packers 24-14 in a game where their best defensive player left, Brian Branch, got ejected, and they still were able to come away with the win. Their defense played great. Their offense looks unstoppable all season. It has, and it really looks like no team's able to stop or slow down the Lions, or at least their offense. The Texans, on the other hand, they're coming off a loss to the Jets on Thursday Night Football in a game where they played all right on offense, but they really did not perform on defense. They let up a ton of yards to Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, and Devontae Adams, and just had a really poor performance on defense. They should be getting Nico Collins back for this game, which should be a huge boost to that offense. And so I do think this will be a close game. I am going to pick the Lions to come away with a win here. However, I really think the Texans will keep this a really close game, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans are able to come away with the win. I just think the Lions are a safer bet, as the Lions are arguably the best team in the league right now. On Monday Night Football, we've got a matchup between the Dolphins and the Rams. The Dolphins, they're coming off a loss to the Bills in a game where they lost to a 61-yard game-winning field goal, but played really well on offense. Their defense really didn't perform that well, though, as they let up 30 points to the Bills. The Rams, on the other hand, they won in overtime over the Seahawks in a game where Puka Nacua got ejected, but Cooper Kupp played amazing. That offense really performing. Just a great all-around performance. The Rams, they've been really performing and improving over the past few weeks, so I am going to go with the Rams to win this one. I think they're a better team than the Dolphins, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was a pretty close game, as the Dolphins' high-powered offense really looks to be back. Up next, we've got a matchup between the Vikings and the Jaguars. The Vikings, they're coming off a win on Sunday Night Football over the Colts in a game where they played really well on offense, in the second half. Sam Darnold started off pretty rough. He had 3 turnovers in the first half, but had a really nice second half, and their defense played unbelievable as the Colts couldn't do anything against them. The Jaguars, on the other hand, they're coming off a loss to the Eagles in a really tight game where they actually played pretty well. Their offense was performing. They just really couldn't close it, and Trevor Lawrence threw a game-sealing interception right at the end. The Jaguars are not a very good team, and the Vikings are a pretty good team, so I am going to pick the Vikings to win this one. I think their defense will be way too much for the Jaguars' offense to be able to handle, so I'm going to go with the Vikings to win. Moving on, we've got a matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The 49ers, they're coming off a bye. They really need it. Christian McCaffrey seems to be returning. Juwan Jennings should also be back. They're just getting healthier. Dre Greenlaw, he's back at practice, so that should be a huge boost to their offense and their defense in the coming weeks. The Buccaneers, on the other hand, they went to overtime against the Chiefs in Monday Night Football and lost because for some reason they didn't go for 2. And then the Chiefs were able to drive down and score on the first drive of overtime. But the Buccaneers played a really good game, even with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin out. But I think the 49ers, with all their pieces returning, should be able to take this one. I think their return to dominance might come with Christian McCaffrey's return, or at least their offense will have a huge boost. So I'm excited to see that, and I'm going to pick the 49ers to win. And then our final matchup is a divisional matchup between the Broncos and the Chiefs. The Chiefs, as I just said, they're coming off a win in overtime over the Buccaneers. They played a really good game. DeAndre Hopkins played amazing. Travis Kelce had a great game. Kareem Hunt had a great game. Patrick Mahomes played really well. The Broncos, on the other hand, they're coming off a game where they got destroyed by the Ravens. The Ravens did everything in their power to destroy them and won by 31 points. The Ravens' offense was way too much for the Broncos' defense, which has been good all season to handle, and it was very problematic for the Broncos. The Broncos are not nearly as good of a team as the Chiefs, but if any team is the one to take down the Chiefs, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the Broncos, as they are still a pretty good team and their divisional opponents. That being said, I still can't, in my right mind, pick against the Chiefs as of right now, so I'm going with the Chiefs to win this game. but I wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos were able to end up taking this one. Moving on to the top 10 list. At number 10, I've got the Chargers. They've been playing really good football. Their defense has been amazing. They were able to pretty much shut down the Browns until garbage time. And their offense has really been performing. J.K. Dobbins has been amazing on the ground. Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston have all been amazing through the air. And so, yeah, they're at 10. At 9, I've got the Steelers. They were on bye, but they have been playing really good football. Russell Wilson has really stepped up and made the team even better than it was with Justin Fields, and they were really good with Justin Fields. And their defense is still one of the best in the entire league. So they're at 9. At 8, I got the Falcons. The Falcons, they are leading their division. They are undefeated in their division, and they've been playing amazing on offense. Even with Drake London getting hurt in that game, they still were able to come away with a win. Their defense and their defensive line is the only problem that I see with this team. Moving on to 7, I've got the Vikings. They have been playing really good defense. They were able to pretty much shut down the Colts for most of that game, as the Colts only scored 6 offensive points the whole game. The Vikings' offense has also been performing, as Justin Jefferson is still one of the best, if not the best, receivers in the league. And Jordan Addison's been playing even better, and TJ Hawkinson came back, and Aaron Jones is healthy and playing really well. So that team is playing really well on offense as well, although Sam Darnold could cut back on the turnovers as of the past couple weeks. Moving on to number 6, I've got the Bills. The Bills played a really close game against the Dolphins, so I did have to drop them a little bit, but they're still a really good team. Their offenses can really perform. Their defense really didn't perform as well this game as they have most games. However, it is a divisional matchup against a really explosive Dolphins team, so I will give them credit where credit is due. They still came away with the win. But their offense really looks amazing. Even with Amari Cooper out, Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir are just carrying that wide receiving core. And they've got an amazing run game, and Josh Allen is playing really efficient football. At 5, I've got the Eagles. They've been playing really well on offense, and their defense has really been stepping it up in the past few weeks. Saquon Barkley is playing unbelievable. He's, I believe, second in the league in scrimmage yards and just playing unreal on offense, especially in the ground game, but somewhat in the passing game too. They were able to come away with that win with A.J. Brown hurt and in that game, and realistically, they can get away with it with how deep their roster is. Their defense has been playing amazing as well in recent weeks, and so they're in at number 5. At 4, I've got the Commanders. They've been playing. Jaden Daniels has been a rookie sensation. He's been playing easily the best of the rookie quarterbacks this year, and playing one of the best of any of the quarterbacks in the league this year. He's unbelievably efficient with his completion percentage. He has a great arm. He's got a strong arm. He can run. And he's just really elevated that offense. Scary Terry McLaurin has looked really good recently with Jaden Daniels at the helm. And their defense has really stepped it up too, as seen in recent weeks, as evident against the Bears last week. Moving on to number 3, I've got the Ravens. The Ravens have been playing unbelievable on offense. Their defense has been a little suspect, but their offense has been unbelievable and totally unstoppable. Lamar Jackson playing unbelievable, playing at an MVP level. Zay Flowers playing unbelievable at receiver, and Derrick Henry leads the league in rushing yards by a lot. The only reason they're not higher is because of their record and because of the fact that their defense has not been playing that up to their potential. Moving on to number 2, I've got the Chiefs. The Chiefs are still undefeated. They barely came away with a win in overtime against the Buccaneers, which is why they are still at 2, but they are still undefeated. They're playing even better on offense now that they have DeAndre Hopkins and Kareem Hunt, and their defense is still one of the best units in the entire league. And coming in at number 1 is the Lions. They were able to come away with a win despite losing their best defensive player to an ejection in Brian Branch, and yet they still came away with a 24-14 victory over a really good Packers team. Their offense looks unstoppable. It doesn't matter who they're using. They could throw to Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jameson Williams or Sam Laporta or Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery. They've just got so many weapons that they're so stacked on offense, and Jared Goff is playing unbelievably efficient. His passer rating over the past 6 weeks is the highest of any quarterback through 6 weeks in NFL history at 140. His completion percentage is also the highest of any quarterback through 6 weeks. So he's just playing unbelievably efficient, and that's why the Lions come in at 1. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And follow me on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And with that, I'll tune in with you next time. Peace.